Jesse Marsch replaced Marcelo Bielsa as Leeds United's head coach towards the end of the 2021-2022 season, and if you're a Leeds fan like me, you'd probably have mixed feelings about the club's decision to part company with Marcelo Bielsa. Lamentations for another day. Since taking over at Leeds United, Jesse Marsch has since made the club his own, getting them to play in his style of play. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at Jesse Marsch's 4-2-3-1 tactic with Leeds United this season. We'll look at Jesse Marsch's philosophy and how he applies it to Leeds United and how the tactic plays out in Football Manager and the results that we've managed to get so far earlier in the season using that tactic. A little bit about Jesse Marsch. He is an American football manager that has managed most of the Red Bull clubs. I'm looking at his managerial stats and career stats and if it's actually going to open up. Okay, he was a player as well. He played for Chicago, DC United and Chivas USA as well. I'm looking for his managerial stats so you can see that he managed Red Bull Salzburg, New York Red Bulls as well, also the Chicago Fire's team that he once played for. So he's done well working for Red Bull, and then he has this gegenpressing philosophy similar to what Ralph Rangnick would use at clubs that he's playing at. Most of the Red Bull managers kind of are involved in that high pressing, high intensity, quick dynamic movement style of play, and it's no different when you're looking at Jesse Marsch and the way Leeds United play and their style of play. It's very similar to high pressing, high tempo, very intense vertical movement, getting the ball from back to front as quickly as possible to try and create a lot of chances. The pressing really helps the team unsettle the opposition and force mistakes and help them win the ball back early. It's really important in Jesse Marsch's philosophy for the team to win the ball back as early as possible, and that way you can create chances and there's space opened up on the back of the opposition's defense for you to create chances and score goals. So at the early part of the season, this is how it went down. We did have a good friendly, and then there was just the one game against PSG. This was probably one of those games that I knew that we were onto something with this tactic. I kind of approached the game passively, but then I realized that we had PSG where we wanted them to be. There was a lot of pressing, there was a lot of match domination. We actually dominated the game against PSG. If possible, I can just click this. Yeah, you can see that we actually had them on the ropes for most of, but they have the quality. They have Lionel Messi, they have Kylian Mbappe, so they'll obviously find a way to score you 3 goals in like a blink of an eye. But we did play well, and then when I made few changes towards the end of the season, towards the end of the match, after trying to be a bit more active in the game, and we somehow got a second goal from Luis Sinisterra in the 90th minute, but then it was just 3-2. So probably if I had a more hands-on approach again for the PSG game, we probably would have had a better result. So we did go on to give Newcastle 7 goals to 0. That's probably going to be a very good example as to where the tactic really pushed on and showed us that we can actually dismantle teams, because Newcastle United were a much better side than we were, but then we actually found a way to press them and then create those chances, always finding those openings. And then the Chelsea game, narrowly, we actually went on to win this game. We did dominate this game as well, I think. Yeah, we did dominate most of this game. As you can see, the stats actually show us Chelsea actually had just few chances to play in this game, but then we were really lacking trying to score that goal. Mendy really had a game that day. Then came the City game. This was probably a tough one, but we knocked Manchester City out of the EFL Cup round. I know they did rest some players, so that's probably where I had a kind of up and down feeling about the game, but then we also dominated this game and then I won. I'm sure if they actually started their first lineup, it may have been different, but let's be positive about this one. So looking at the tactic and the way Jesse Marsch set it up, I've actually created 3 versions of the tactic. So to the tactic, first let me just clear everybody out, and then looking at what we have here, it's a 4-2-3-1 system like I mentioned before, and then the super keeper is Ilhan Melia. He's going to play as a super keeper on support DT. I haven't attached any instructions to him as a super keeper. And then in the central defensive position, ideally this would be 2 ball playing defenders, but then I realized that Pascal Struijk may not have the largest passing range, so I don't want him to lose possession too much, and I just want somebody that is going to be in there to try and be solid in defense. The reason behind Jesse Marsch's back 4 is that the 2 fullbacks are going to be getting high up and they're going to be the one offering the width in the side, because the attacking wingers are going to be slightly narrow. Sinisterra, that is playing as a winger on support here, he is still going to get into the box and try to score goals. You probably see his stats. He has already scored 3 goals for us in the season, and then he's had 5 appearances and expected goals of over 1.5 goals per game. That's over 1.69, over 1.6 goals per game. Key passes, he's creating everything there, and then very good average rating as well. So that player is not as wide as we expect him to be, even though I think it's probably because the fullback is going to be unattacked. So Sinisterra tends to get into the box a lot and tends to find himself on the end of some of these crosses from the other fullback, or sometimes from through balls found by Mark Roca and Jack Harrison. Also, they play a lot of through balls in here for Sinisterra, and then he's latching onto them and then finding the back of the net. In the central midfield, Jesse Marsch employs two central midfielders. One is a deep line midfielder. I opted for a deep line midfielder, a deep line playmaker on defend duty, because this player tends to drop in between the space left behind by the fullback and the central defender, or the space between the central defender and the other central defender. So he's going to get into that gap in between two of them and then find himself, let's say, difficult for the AI or the opposition to try and pick him up, and then he can play long passes, direct passes to players that are in the attacking areas and then unlock the opposition's defense. The player beside him is a lot more energetic, a much more pressing, what's the word I'm going to use now, a very more aggressive midfielder. You'd see this in Tyler Adams and Matthias Klitsch as well. So I opted for a box-to-box midfielder here. They're going to play this well, and then they're going to close down more and then tackle harder. The number 10 role is probably the most important role in this system, because this guy presses an awful lot. This is Brendan Eriksson, and you can see it from the error against Mendy when the error against Chelsea when he pressed Mendy and then got possession of the ball and scored for Leeds United. That started off their 3-0 win over Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. So looking at in attack, we actually have a deep line playmaker on support and a deep line forward on support duty in Rodrigo. Ideally, this would be a pressing forward, but then I opted for a deep line forward because I want this player to somehow be in and around this area here and to kind of drop off and then allow Brandon Aronson to get ahead of him and try and cause a lot of problems in the opposition's defense. And so far so good, that has been working. Like I mentioned about the wide players tend to tuck inside and stay a bit narrower and then allowing the fullbacks to be on attack duty. But then I realized from what I observed, the way Sinisterra behaved after I set the tactic up in this way, once the fullback is on attack duty, the winger that is on support duty would somehow tend to play narrow. You would think that they're going to get in each other's way, but in this tactic so far, I haven't seen them get in each other's way. Somehow Sinisterra has to be he's sometimes always inside the box. I think it's because of the way Sinisterra the way his player preferred moves are written down. So looking at Luis Sinisterra, you can see that he tries to runs with the ball often. Doesn't really say anywhere that he cuts inside, but then he's an ideal inside forward and inverted winger inside forward on the other side as well. So he tends to get into the box a lot. That's why I realized that there's a lot of space for the fullback on attack duty to actually get forward. Once this tactic was created, I did create a third version of the tactic which kind of supported Sinisterra's movement a lot. This is the more cautious version of the Jesse Marsch tactic, and then there's a fullback here on support duty as well. This fullback here is going to be Luke Ayling or Stuart Dallas. The reason why I use an attacking fullback in the first version is because ideally both fullbacks are always on attack, but then you're going to play those games against the big boys, against the Cities, the Manchester United, what's the other team? Liverpool. And then with those ones, you're not going to want to have everybody just bombing in forward like that and then leave your three defensive midfielders, or defensive players left unattended. So I opted for this fullback on support duty, where a more highly influential figure is going to play here, like Luke Ayling, Stuart Dallas as well. They're going to play in the fullback on support duty role. And then Rasmus, I hope I get his name right. There's a fullback we have that is the ideal one playing on attack, Rasmus Christensen. He's the one going to play as a fullback on attack duty when we're playing on the right hand side. Now for the team instructions, Leeds United do tend to press on the front, so I opted for a much more often trigger press and then a much higher line of engagement. And so having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players up front with a slightly higher defensive line as well, this ensures that we have close to 7 players in the opposition's territory trying to win the ball back. Most of my players have been asked to close down more, trigger press more. That's by the 2 central defenders here. They have been asked to press them because in Jesse Marsch's system, most Leeds United players tend to win the ball back from the opposition, or they tend to press the ball handler with more than 2 or 3 players. That's to ensure that they actually win the ball. The trigger press isn't tied to a player when the ball is passed to a particular player. It's tied to when the ball has been passed. So once the ball is in motion, the team starts to press. That's why I opted for a much more often trigger press. That way they don't rest on their laurels, they're always pressing. Mid-game, you're going to tend to drop this off when your team is comfortable and then you have possession, and then you don't want to try and concede goals. But more often than not, when the game is starting, when the opposition is not aware of what's going on, you're going to tend to press them a whole lot. Funny enough, it works, and that's the problem with not a problem per se. That's the idea behind the opposition instruction when it comes to this tactic. more often than not, I leave this blank until the game starts. And once the game starts, I then apply or ask the assistant to apply the opposition instructions, just like I've done here. And then when I look at the opposition instructions, I see those triggers that can actually help us win the ball back as quickly as possible. As you can see one here on Boubacar Kamara, he has been asked to, or my players have been asked to trigger press Boubacar Kamara. I actually like this. I like the idea of it, and so we're going to go through with that when we're actually starting the game. Tyrone Mings is probably a more controlling central defender, so it's going to be difficult to win the ball off him. So I can understand my assistant manager saying trigger press the other guy, Boubacar Kamara. What I would like to do sometimes to actually force those mistakes to happen is to put Tyrone Mings on a tight marking instruction. So once he's tight marked, the goalkeeper will likely not play the ball to him, and they're going to play the ball a lot more to Boubacar Kamara, and then we're going to trigger press from there and then get the ball from him as early as possible. Because of the way Leeds play, the in transition phase is going to be almost just the counter press. Melia, I didn't instruct Melia to distribute the ball as quickly as possible because I don't want us to lose possession. My players may not be high up in the field once we get possession of the ball, or once the goalkeeper is in possession of the ball. So I did want him to play the ball out as naturally as he thinks as possible. So I left all of this blank, and then I know that in the system, in Jesse Marsch's high pressing system, counter press is very important. So we need to win the ball back as soon as possible. So that's why the only instruction assigned to the in transition phase is the counter press instruction. The counter instruction is also relative. If the situation is there, we're going to hit the position on the counter attack. If the opportunity isn't there, we won't bother trying to force that counter attack. When in possession of the ball, this is also the other instructions that I have. Just play with a high tempo because I want the ball to move from back to front vertically as quickly as possible. So you can see that that has been controlled by the width as well. Instruct the players to play through the middle of the pitch with a narrow attacking width. No other instruction has been selected. No other instruction is really relevant to select right now, because I noticed that this kind of tends to force things. So I'm going to just leave everything black, and so far so good. It has been working. We have been getting results with this, as I showed you earlier in the video. And then looking at the walk the ball into the box instruction, when you play against lower league teams or teams that will tend to sit deep and defend really deep with numbers, you can then walk the ball into the box and drop the tempo a lot to maybe just standard, and then have it unbalanced and balanced, and then the team would still play well, but then you notice that you'll be able to break the teams down and then score a lot more goals when you use it on walk the ball into the box. Another crossing, when it comes to crossing the ball in that final third, ideally I'm going to want to use the low crosses in this sense, but then you notice that I still leave everything blank in case I have a tall player in there, because Leeds United don't force low crosses. They cross the ball whether it's in the air, whether it's whipped, whether it's on the ground, they still cross the ball regardless. So I just left that blank, even though I really like using low crosses in Football Manager 2022. I'm going to leave that blank for the sake of this, for this test, and then so far so good. Like I said, it has been working. So guys, that's about it for Jesse Marsch's 4-2-3-1 system with Leeds United in Football Manager 2022. Let me know what you think in the comment down below. I'll catch you guys in more videos like this. I'm actually going to go on and continue my series because I'm really having fun. I mean, how often do you beat City and Everton and Chelsea and Newcastle at a stretch? I know it's still a long way to go in the season, and I'm going to have a problem at left back probably because I need to sign somebody there. And once I sign somebody there will no longer be a problem. Junior Firpo is the only left back that I have right now, and so far he has been playing every game with like a 9 out of 10 rating. So we're going to need to sign somebody to be a good replacement for him in case he gets injured. So that's the summary of the tactic, guys. Let me know what you think. I'll catch you guys with more videos like this. Remember to subscribe to the channel and also turn on the notifications bell so you can get notified when new videos like this come up.